Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back with the 377th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We've had a week off, and boy, we got a ton of stuff to deal with as the 2026 election draws ever closer. We're going to be talking with a couple of folks who are deep in the weeds on protecting the election. We're also going to talk about the fundraising scams that the parties are waging. There's a big article out called Hook and Squeeze about how elderly folks are being exploited by the parties for money that never gets to candidates or to do any real political work, but rather is just well, where does it go? Actually, the article and nobody else seems to know exactly where all these campaign donations that they scare the hell out of you, and then you throw in your $5, and then then the next thing you know, you get another demand for another campaign donation. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the need to set aside 20% of whatever you're going to give to a candidate to a group of actual grassroots relational organizing groups and election protection groups that we know that we can certify and have faith in and really understand that our money is going to go to a decent place. What a concept. In the second half of the show, I really don't like calling it a show, it's a gathering. In the second half of the gathering, we're going to be joined by John Giesman, who is a major utility attorney in California. We've actually seemed to have won some kind of victory with Gavin Newsom and the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant. Newsom, thankfully, will be leaving the governor's mansion on January whenever, and he has been the one who's perpetrated the continued operation of the reactors at Diablo Canyon, which should have shut, well, they should never have been built, but they were supposed to have been shut in 24 and 25. Newsom waltzed in and prolonged their life. People have been talking about operating them essentially forever, certainly till 2045. And Newsom has stepped back from that alleged deadline and says he's not going to talk about operating the reactors beyond 2030. So that is a bit of a victory. John Giesman knows more about Diablo Canyon financing and all that stuff than pretty much anybody else. So we're going to be honored to have him at 6 o'clock Eastern, along with Kevin Camps, who's going to talk about new legal action at the Palisades reactor in Michigan. You know, we just had this big uproar over the Democratic primary in Michigan, but what's it going to come to? Well, where does Dr. Saeed stand on the Palisades reactor? We want to know about that too. And then we're going to be run by the great Mike Hersh, who's going to talk to us about this housing bill and some deeply disturbing provisions having to do, among other things, with condominiums. It's a very, very important issue. We're really honored to have Mike give us the rundown on that. That'll be towards the second half of the second half. So, anyway, here we are, number 377. We've got ALISON GREENE with us. We can start with ALISON, and then we want to talk about campaign finance in general and the 20% solution. Next week, we are going to have a summit, a national summit on election protection and grassroots organizing. And we may unveil a new website to facilitate getting money to getting support to grassroots organizing and to relational organizing and to making sure that the money that people give the candidates actually does something real. So we'll go to that in a few minutes on a preliminary basis. We want to talk about the 20% solution. We want to talk about www. I guess people don't say www anymore. Sign of my age. usgrassroots.org. And we're going to get into that on a preliminary basis. Also, we're joined by Vina Colley, Fine, in the second hour, we want to talk. I just finished reading a shocking article in the New York Times saying that NVIDIA and the tech industry want to spend $100 billion. That's with a B, building a single facility for a data center, which we know as a crypto scam, in Southern Ohio, in your neighborhood, Vina. So we want to talk about that in the second hour. $100 billion for a single building, single facility that'll do nobody any good except the tech bros. We're joined by the great John Steiner and also by Ray Lutz. So, and we're going to get rolling here on election protection. I know, Allison, you have been specializing in the ghost voting situation. We want to talk to Ray about the auditing and to John Steiner about the 20% campaign and the possibility of reviving this website. So, Allison, let's give you the stage first, and then we're going to rock and roll. Go ahead, Allison Green.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I've missed you guys for the last couple of weeks, but I actually spent a bit of my time in DC, specifically in the Rayburn building, working as a whistleblower on trying to figure out how we bring to light all of the election issues that we have. And there was some great information that I learned there. But Sunny, one of the things that you talk about the data centers, you talk about condos, and which relates to me with housing, with affordability. I've been watching the news about Iran. I still have not forgotten about the fact that women's reproduction is under attack. The climate is an issue. And the reality is that I'm so grateful that you provide this platform for election protection, because the reality is none of those things will change if we do not protect our elections to ensure that the will of the people are actually being represented. And you mentioned that Ray Lutz, he does great work on auditing, but really when I talk about ghost voters, I also am talking about auditing our voter rolls, because the voter rolls become a means of potentially adding votes in a way that we traditionally knew as padding the numbers. Basically, ghost voters are fraudulent voter registrations that can pad the numbers. They can be casting ballots that are not legal. And so that is actually one of the reasons that I talk so much about ghost voters. But on the same side, I know the great work that Greg Palast does with Vigilante, that Raymond's doing about voter suppression. And the reality is we all know voter suppression is a huge issue. But what I've found through my research is that there's a whole other element of voter suppression happening behind the scenes in the voter rolls themselves and the technology that counts our votes. So the question is not just about, and I'm so glad that you talked about organizing, because it's not just about getting out the vote, but it's making sure that we can get Trump out of our votes, and the Republicans and the Russians out of our votes. Now, I know that some people will actually say we want to be nonpartisan. I
Well,
want to
we
be,
are these calls are nonpartisan, but
yes,
you're allowed, you can speak what you want. You can't raise money. So tell your
yeah,
primary work has been ghost voting, and that is basically the creation of fake ballots to be cast by the people with money who are controlling the polls. Is that correct? And
correct.
how prevalent is that?
Actually, I'm so glad you asked that question, because
Okay.
I really want to address this.
Okay, go ahead.
People, based on my research, I can tell you that not only can I, not tell you how many ghost voters are on the rolls, I can tell you nobody can tell you that for sure. It would be like asking somebody how many bots are there on social media. Nobody can answer that question. But what I can tell you is I've found tens of thousands, if not, tens of thousands of ghost voters are kind of a tip of the iceberg. It's just one small grouping. So what I'm talking about is throughout the country there's as many ghost voters, in my opinion, on the voter rolls as there are bots on social media. And they don't
Okay,
necessarily activate them all, but they use them strategically.
so actually, probably the answer to the question of how many ghost voters there are is how many do they need? And
Exactly.
um, and so the question then becomes, of course, what do we do about them? And
Yes.
yes, so uh, this is the question we're going to have to answer, and we'll
But
get to
I
that
can answer that if you want. I'll plant
very
it.
quickly, please, very quickly. Tell us.
Grassroots organizing. If we know a ghost voter is on the rolls, that we suspect it's a ghost voter, we can verify that because we, in the next 3 months, have canvassers going door to door. And if we go to a door and we ask for somebody who does not exist and can verify that through grassroots organizing, then we can actually campaign to get these ghost voters off of the rolls so that they're not able to cast
Okay,
any
so
vote.
you're saying that the answer to fighting against the ghost voters is to get the name from the voter registration rolls and then check on their address to see if they're actually there. Okay,
It's as easy as that. Yeah.
okay, very interesting. Mike Hirsch, you have a hand. Then I want to go to John Steiner, who's joined us to talk about getting the money to the groups that actually will do this kind of work. Mike Hirsch, go ahead, and then John Steiner, please.
Yeah, I just want to underscore, we've discussed this a few times before, and I've thought a lot about how the mechanism works. And we've had some people say, Allison, don't claim that they're fake voters because you're going to give justification to the vacuuming up legal voters off of the voting rolls. And that's a separate issue. That's something that's going to happen whether Allison goes on vacation and decides to take up knitting and leaves us
Okay.
behind or not. So that's already happening. But what I'm trying to figure out is how the mechanism works. And basically it's this. People will register these placeholders. They're not real people. Sometimes it's like Rabbi G or something like that, or it's just like Mr. X or something. It's like they don't even try to make it look like a real person. So what I think every board of elections, every county and state board of elections should be called upon to go through the voting lists and just clean out the garbage. Now, this is their assumption. Well, if somebody like fills out a registration form as like Bart Simpson or Mickey Mouse, it's no big deal because Bart Simpson and Mickey Mouse won't vote. But it is a big deal because these are potential liabilities. What could actually happen is Sonny goes to vote, MYLA goes to vote, Allison goes to vote, I go to vote. We're listed as having voted. But what ends up happening is through chicanery, I think it's at the tabulation level, they will flip a whole lot of votes from, LA County to like Shangri-La County in California that doesn't even exist, and say all these people voted and here's their names: Mr. X, Bart Simpson, whatever. And
Okay.
those votes crowd out our votes. Our votes disappear into the ether. And for one, they substitute these garbage votes, these ghost votes in our place. And that's what the vulnerability is. So I think it really is up to the registrars, the boards of elections to clean out these lists. Now,
Well,
Greg
remember
Pallet,
also though, Mike, that there are people who are trying to strip legitimate voters
that's
from the voter
exactly what I
program.
said. That's exactly
Yeah.
right, Sonny.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
Greg brought that up. We need to protect legitimate people, and we need to make sure that people aren't, thrown off the voting list because, somebody named, you know, George Black or something. committed a felony and isn't
Well,
eligible to vote in Texas, but then they claim that he's in 8
right.
other states as well with different
But
ages, different middle names, different addresses, junior, senior,
right. So
whatever.
that's what we
That
saw.
we have to shut that down. And then we also
Right.
have to shut down the vigilantism where they just say, I don't think you're a legitimate voter. And they're just basically, oh, that person's skin is too dark to be a legitimate voter because they're being challenged by these vigilantes who are literally racist and voter suppression. So there's two things going on. One is the thing that's been going on for quite a while, and then the other one is this new chicanery, this new technique of making it so you knock off legitimate voters, you replace them with ghost voters, then you flip votes that were actually cast by dicking around
Right.
with how people vote. And it's two separate things, and we need to pay attention to both of them. I see both Ray and MYLA have comments. Go
Well,
ahead.
right. So go ahead. But the bottom line here is that protecting the voter rolls goes both ways. Allison has pointed out that fake ghost voters are being added, but we've been working for decades with legitimate voters being stripped.
Mhm.
And how we thread that needle is extremely demanding. Let's put it that way. MYLA RESON, Raymond Luntz, and then John Steiner. If you do want to jump in, please do. Go ahead,
Al-
MYLA.
Allison, excuse me, you said something earlier. I just want to follow up on it. You said that one of the ways that we will address this is by having canvassers go to the suspected addresses and finding out if Mr. GW really does live at that address. And so my question is, who are the canvassers? What is the plan in terms, or do you already have something in place? Can you expand on that plan?
Right. So one of the things is there are many organizations who are actually putting feet on the ground. It's what we call the ground game. And I am talking to some of them at the moment, and I'm hoping to actually cement that relationship with at least one, if not more of them, because they literally are, and it's a way of supporting what they're doing. I mean, there is kind of stuff going on in the background, and I think that sometimes that people are being deliberately steered away from these houses where a ghost voter may live. And so we want to just make sure that strategically we're looking at what doors we knock on, not just to get to get to know our neighbors and encourage them to vote, but also to make sure that their vote doesn't get diluted. Because really, this is actually part of what Jack Smith charged and indicted Trump for in the 2020 election. So I know that Mike mentioned that this is new, but the reality is it's not new. It's just new that it's coming to the surface and that we're starting to understand it. And it's actually been going on, my evidence shows, since before 2016, and it's just not been made aware of. So the midterms is not the end of this action, but we do have people who are going to be going door to door for the next 3 months, and I'm very much trying to cement those relationships so that we can actually, and we have it both ways. We can actually, from the database, and guys, I've been a little bit busy because our database now is up to 57 million people around the country that we have their voter records. But because we take snapshots at different times, we actually have 467 million voter records. And what the database can do can actually print out a list in a specific targeted area that says, these are the people who have disappeared from the voter rolls. And we want to knock on their door and say, we know that you were actually registered in June, but we noticed that you're no longer registered. Did you move? Was there a reason? If they say, "Oh no, I'm still registered," we can show them that they're not and get them re-registered, because that is happening. And then vice versa, we're having targeted lists where we're verifying identities. So we want to work with organizers to work on both sides, because this is about not just adding votes through ghost voters, but as Sunny said, it's a very tricky thing, but they're also deleting votes. And we don't
Right.
want to
When
take,
that,
it's not one over the other, it's both. We
yeah,
have to
that's
fight.
been going on for a long time, of course.
Exactly.
Ray Lutz, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I look at it this way. The ghost voters thing, if it exists, is a way to cover their tracks if they want to cover them. I'm concerned also about people who don't care about covering their tracks or won't go to that extra work to cover it and just change the votes in the tabulator. Why come up with ghost voters if you can just reach into the tabulator and flip votes around? You don't need any extra voters. You just change the votes that are there. And any of these machines can be hacked if they have access. Anybody with access can hack them and change the votes. In fact, Dominion system was caught having a general purpose database management system software in the system, which would allow people to just change votes and not be logged through the voting system at all. And that's what Tina Peters was busted for finding and given 9 years of sentencing when maybe she should. I mean, she was caustic in many other ways, and that's why they got upset at her. But basically, what she found there was actually quite concerning, right? And so basically, I look at it like this. Any of these elections can be hacked. You don't need ghost voters to do it. And if they did say we're going to come up with these extra voters to do that, I'm wondering why they would go to that much trouble when they can just change the votes in the tabulator. That's why I don't buy into it too hard.
No,
Well,
I,
of
I,
course, if
Can I
That's
respond?
this
if-
is
Yeah.
my point. My point of view is I don't buy into it that hard because I haven't seen the evidence that they're actually going that extra mile to come up with the ghost voters and cover their tracks when they can just change the votes in the system. And it's very, very hard to detect too, because in the last election, Harris versus Trump was only a 1.5% difference. But what concerns me, it's not just 1.5% approximately. It was 1.5000%, only within a few hundred votes of being exactly 1.5%, like it was a contractual, measure that they had to live up to. And so I'm concerned that they can reach into these systems. I don't think you need satellites and lasers to do it. You just need somebody nearby that can plug in a thumb drive for a second, or maybe just access to the internet. And look, I'm concerned. AI can be sicked on this stuff, run all these swarms of rogue AI agents, and figure out a way through these clumsy security systems. And here's the other thing, and I posted a little comic in the chat. The real danger this time is Trump saying to Mike Johnson and Kash Patel, Mike Johnson, I want you to have Congress take this over because you have the right under Article 1, Section 5 for the Congress to take over any elections that involve the U.S. Congress. And then Kash Patel says we're seizing the ballots because we don't trust the count. They seize it all, and then Trump just makes an announcement. The way around this is to get ballot images saved so that we can reconstruct the election if we can do that. And so what we've done is we've contacted every state, Secretary of State, and we've also sent to the top 300 counties and the top hot counties to ask them, what are your procedures for making backups? Most of them say, no records respond to your request because they don't have any procedures. And asking them, please do so because we need to get this. And it pushes on this point. Some people our counties are destroying the ballot images just because they think, well, there's no reason to have these. No, there's a good reason to have them because we need backup against this kind of act. So that's what I'm concerned about. The ghost voters thing, as they say, I'd love to see more detailed information about that. If there's ever a catch on that somebody is actually doing this and changing it. But like I say, I wonder about it because I wonder why someone would go to those lengths when you can just secretly make the change inside the machine and you don't need ghost voters. You can do it without them. So that's why I'm concerned about it.
Well, Ray,
hey,
really,
keep
really
looking into it.
quickly, if they shift too many votes at the tabulator level without going through the ghost voters, it leaves a very glaring mathematical pattern that just it just shocks people, and it leaves evidence that they're doing it. The ghost voters allow them to do an extra layer of subtlety.
You don't need additional vote so the new voters to change the
Right,
votes that are in the
right.
system.
No, I'm not saying you do. I'm saying that you do it to disguise what they're doing it. And the reason that we know that they have to do it is because they're doing it. We don't need to speculate. This is something that they think that they need to do. Maybe they're wrong and you're right, but they're
No,
doing it.
I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm saying that think about it. Why would you go ahead and concoct these ghost
We just
voters?
answered that. We answered that a few
Okay.
times, Ray. Please just
Okay.
think about what we're
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
It provides camouflage to disguise what they're doing, because there's been ample reporting of votes switching, and this is the thing, is forewarned is forearmed. What you're doing is very important, reaching out to people and telling them, watch out for some kind of chicanery. And they should be preserving these voter images and all that. But the way it's going to work is, once Trump makes an announcement, people are going to try to sue to rerun the elections. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're sore losers. You lost. The polls were wrong. And that's something Sonny and I have been talking about. A lot of these polls in primaries show, Dr. Al-Said is up by 20 points and he wins by a point. Or, the woman running in Wisconsin is up by 15 and she loses. That they're going to say, look, you can't trust the polls. But in fact, the polls are almost always right. It's just sometimes the ballot results have been rigged. And Ray,
Yes.
I understand that you might not understand the
No,
efficacy of these ghost votes, but let's not spend time stepping on each other's things that we're doing.
Okay.
Let's be mutually supportive and reinforcing, because they're going to be using all these different methodologies to screw us out of our elections. We can't afford to be bickering amongst ourselves and saying this is wrong and don't do this and whatever. I'm not saying that you did that, but we've had people yelling at each other when we need to work together. We don't have time for, a discord amongst ourselves. Just everybody do what you think is best, and don't try to please each other.
I have
well,
a,
no, I'm just saying I'm not going to support something that I don't think is going to be a viable approach. That's all.
Okay.
Just for
That's
me,
fine. That's
my
fine. We're going to
opinion.
move on.
Everybody
gonna
can
move
have
on
their
from that.
opinion.
have a
Yeah,
quick response
Go
to,
ahead, Myla.
Go
and I
ahead.
just like to say that what we know is that there are many ways that they go about doing this. There isn't just one way. Voter suppression and monkeying around with elections, they'll do it each and every way they can. So they're not mutually exclusive, in my opinion. And that's all that I have
And
to
Ray,
say.
you're 100% right. And Allison, Mike, this is all coming at us at once. And the bottom line is, if you have 300 million or 300 billion dollars to throw in an election, they can do whatever the hell they want. And that's what we want to take notice of. I do want to call on John Steiner, who may not want to speak yet, but John, I want to enter in here. This is we're all going to focus. We're going to focus all this whole hour on the upcoming election, as we will again next week. And we want to have a summit on election protection. Ray, I want you to be a part of it, please, with Allison, Mike, MYLA. But the bottom line also is the bottom line again. And we've just seen a major piece, a shocking piece in the major media called Hook and Squeeze, about how the Democratic Party, in this case, we know the Republican Party also does it. They get these massive small donations by the millions, and then use the money not to support candidates, but just to raise more millions. And John Steiner and I have been talking about how to get money that people donate for campaigns into the hands of the kinds of groups that are going to look for this kind of behavior, and also focus on voter turnout. We're tentatively calling it the 20% solution, where we ask people to take 20% of the money they would give to a party or a candidate and give it directly to grassroots relational organizing, and election protection groups. John Steiner, do you want to comment on that?
I'd be happy to, Harvey, but I do want to make sure that T is going to have time to speak today and whether Allison has any time to respond to Ray. So I just want to make sure that that's going
Yes,
to
there'll be
happen on the
time, but
show.
I want to put this on the table before we move ahead. So, so then we'll have a whole, everything will be on the table for
All
this
right, I'm happy to
session.
do a few minutes.
Please.
So this is an idea that Harvey has come up with, which is a great idea, encouraging donors, and particularly major donors, to take 20% of whatever they give to a candidate and give it to grassroots groups, particularly in the swing congressional districts where that could make a difference. And we don't have anything worked out formally as yet, but it looks like we may have a national organization that is signed off on by other national organizations who knows where most effectively and strategically to put that kind of money. So it can be a one-stop shop. My sense is, and we should have something more to report by next week for sure, and hopefully even the program in place. Because there are various ways to give money, both at the state level, the federal level, this is probably what we're thinking about doing between now and November. And next year, we're going to bring more of these organizations together so that donors can have a choice of where they want to give. But everybody agrees, at least for this year, let's focus on the congressional races that are most critical and have a one-stop shop where people can give money, knowing that that money will go to relational organizing groups on the ground that have been well vetted.
And to election protection groups whose work we can trust. So that, you know,
Harvey and I are still in conversation about how this is going to work.
yeah, so we'll have more next week for our summit, and we may have some actual players that John is working on to add to the dialogue, and we may have a website. We in 2024 we set up usgrassroots.org, had 50 or so groups listed, and I think what we're talking about doing, we're not 100% set to go, is to whittle that down to a handful so that we can send people to that website and they can have a pretty a workable choice of groups nationally and especially on election protection and state by state on relational organizing. There's the actual website as it stands now, but it'll be worked over. So John's great genius has been to move this forward, and we hopefully next week we'll have some answers in terms of how the website will be set up and what groups we're going to be hosting there. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope. Let's wait and see how this all plays out, and hopefully we'll have a more specific report next week.
Right. So anybody want to comment on that going forward? We've got another half hour or so to go on this topic. And now, John, let's as you asked, let's go to T from this will hold. We have 48 people on the call. Let's get you unmuted, T, and go ahead if you can speak to yours, and then we'll go to Allison and back to Ray. It's an illuminating dialogue between Ray and Allison because we're looking at both ways that the election can be stolen. And I will tell you also, I mean, I look at Epoch and News and a few other right-wing sites, and the dialogue is similar. I mean, they're also saying, well, we need to strip the voter rolls, and we need to, make sure that everybody turns out. Steve Bannon, for the devil himself, has come out and advocated for relational organizing. So we're not in a vacuum here on this dialogue. T, from This Will Hold, what do you got for us?
Well, we have put together a cyber team that is able to be forward facing, because my team up until now, they really have to work under the condition of anonymity. So I threw out a request, and I actually put a document in the chat here, if you're able to pull that up so you guys can see it. Yes, that's where I recruited a bunch of folks. And so we've now made contact with some of the CISA folks who were fired, for lack of a better term, and we're building this cyber team. And several of them have said they've been watching elections for years, and that everybody just assumes that all these groups that are in charge of monitoring and, watching for foreign interference, that they're all just going to do their jobs. And then we get to the election and they're all cyber experts, and they all realize collectively that they're not doing their jobs because the elections are hacked. And so, it's kind of one of those moments where we all just said, you know what, we're going to have to be the ones to do this. So we're putting together a package for state attorneys general, to show them this is the path of the vote. And in this last election, it's actually bigger than the tabulators and the equipment. It's these fake county vote banks where they infiltrated the system post tabulation, which is why we were able to see it on the television screen. Why millions of votes were coming out of the system is because they were pulling them out and replacing them with the vote banks with illegitimate votes for Donald Trump, which is why the data, if you've looked at any of Election Truth Alliance's data, is so skewed. It looks like Democrats voted down ballot blue and then flipped to Trump at the top of the ticket, is because they removed millions of votes for Kamala Harris and replaced them with these vote banks, which we've been able to mathematically prove were used. And so we had a call last night, and we're just laying out the investigation for the state attorneys general to say, look at these companies. This should not happen. This should not happen. It looks like DDHQ, which is run by Marco Rubio's former cybersecurity tech, his guru, is at the helm of DDHQ, and it looks like they are tied into the system of record, and they have right access is what it looks like is happening. And so to be able to say, these are the subpoenas you need, these are the logs you need to be requesting, this is where you need to be, asking for these records and these files, there should be digital footprints in all of these areas. So we're writing everything out for the blue states, and the state attorneys general. And then we're having a call on Zoom next Sunday. And I apologize for being late. For whatever reason in my head, I had it an hour later. So thank you, Lynn, for reaching out to me, because I absolutely would have jumped on in an hour. Like, where is everyone? But anyway, long story short, next Sunday we're doing a Zoom. Our last national Zoom, I ordered the 1,000 package where you can fit 1,000 people in the room, and we maxed out and had tons of emails from people saying we weren't able to get in. So I'm buying the larger room this time. And then if whoever's controlling the screen, if you're able to go through the chat, you can see the document that I uploaded. I can put it in there again if you need me to, but you should be able to pull that over and so everybody can see what I'm talking about. I can just add it again. At any rate, I just want y'all to, because I think it was Allison, I'm not sure who said that there are multiple ways that they're doing it. This is like the granddaddy of them all. You don't have to go to individual machines. It is such a hack at such a higher level where they can affect millions of votes at once. And that's why we saw, almost 1 million votes, 900 and something thousand votes disappeared in Michigan on election night, and 700 and something thousand in Wisconsin. Then the following day in Michigan, another 250,000 were taken out and then put back in. That's where they're covering their tracks. And it's such a larger attack vector and so much more simple than having to mess around with tabulators or any of that. And that's why Elon Musk knew the results 4 hours in advance, because he created them. So, and the cyber guys who've been doing this for 30 years, we've got one guy who his full-time job is attacking companies' systems to show them their vulnerabilities. And so we're just going to get it out to everybody. We're going to have a packet for everybody to see next Sunday, and have the larger Zoom, and the cyber fellows will be able to be on there to answer questions. And we just want to push it out to everyone. It's not just for the state attorneys general. We want the general public to see it so they can also be knocking on those doors. I think the bigger threat beyond this is, it would be great if we could get states to just say, you know what, we're not going to use election equipment, for this election. We're going to stick to paper ballots. We're going to phone in the results, and then we'll address open source or whatever, method past the midterms, hurt a little bit on the counting because it's going to take forever this time. I don't know that that's a reasonable request considering how close we are to the actual elections. And then the larger thing that we need to be worried about is what Donald Trump is going to do when it's time to start swearing people in, because this should be a blue tsunami. Democrats have run the table for the last 18 months. November should be nothing different. Yes, there it is. So
Well, but what's happened now on these two recent primaries, the one in Wisconsin and the one in Michigan, is that there were polling numbers showing an outcome. They showed the beginning that Said would win big time, and that the female progressive candidate in Wisconsin had a double-digit lead. And
yes,
yet she lost, and Said barely squeaked through. So what they've done now is run a major media campaign undermining the polls. And what we can expect, I believe, in November is that the Democrats will be hugely ahead significantly ahead in the Senate races and in the House races, and then they'll lose by narrow margins, just just the kind of margins that $300 million can buy. And the polls, which are probably accurate, will have been undermined. And you'll have all these people, Democrats and Republicans, coming on the media saying, well, once again, the polls were wrong.
right. Well, and the polls were not just wrong. I mean, I was tracking both of those races. Francesca in one of the most recent polls closest to the election. So Crowley was back in the race. So the excuse that he wasn't in it isn't there. She was up by 22 points. And with El Sayed, he was 10, 15, 18 points ahead. Polls just don't miss that much. So it does seem that, but then we, also have to have the conversation that it's not just Republicans doing this, because that was a Democratic primary. So it's frustrating, but kind of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago is that Democrats are complicit and they want
Well, we remember what happened to Bernie Sanders when he ran for president in the primary in California.
Yep.
And we know that progressive Democrats are attacked even directly with funding by the Democratic Party. And a lot of the money, the millions that the Democratic Party marshals in primaries is aimed against progressive Democrats.
Agreed.
And we've seen, and so you raised that question about the Democratic primaries and the massive shrinkage of their apparent leads of the progressives in both Michigan and Wisconsin.
Right.
So the question then is, what are we going to see when it comes to Republicans versus Democrats, and especially when there is unlimited amounts of money on the table, but as we saw in 24. And of course, from the Democratic side, the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, never questioned the outcome in 24, never questioned the shrinkage of polls, and in my mind, never questioned the fact that the public rallies being held by the progressives massively outnumbered the public rallies not being held, that were held by candidates who were not progressive in both parties. And yet the outcomes were vastly different than what you would have expected. How do we deal with that?
And frankly, if you've read her book, she says that Mark Elias told her there was nothing actionable. He didn't see anything actionable. So,
and Mark Elias is one of the evil players in this account of what happens to donated money in the hook and squeeze syndrome.
yeah.
And they tell Mark Elias is always trotted out as having won all these lawsuits
Right.
And yet I remember from Ohio 2004 that he was, right there
Yep.
smashing us who dared to question the victory of George W. Bush,
Right.
which was always a psychedelic moment. Lynn
And he,
Feinerman, you have
Hillary,
not spoken.
he did the same with Hillary. He told Hillary as well that he didn't see anything actionable. And so he's kind of the through line, frankly. And I realize that a lot of Democrats see him as a hero, but I view everything from a behavioral standpoint. That's, my background is psychology and political science. And how much money would he be making if the GOP hadn't been at the helm and hadn't gotten these Supreme Court justices in place? I mean, he's got over 60 cases in litigation, and this is specialty law. I'm sure he's not giving them a discount. So he's filling his own coffer and making a fortune. And he's now advised 3 Democratic presidential candidates to stand down when the evidence was there of manipulation. And now that we
Absolutely.
have the Mueller report and you stack that on top of the Epstein files, and you can see in 2016 where Jeffrey Epstein, Peter Thiel, Russia, and all of Trump's, cronies were literally colluding to rig the election for Donald Trump. And so we see that, and we know that only
Well,
7,000 votes separated her and Trump. She won by almost 3 million in the popular, which is a whole other, Zoom call. But for him to tell her to stand down when she had experts standing there saying, we see evidence of manipulation,
right.
we need to
Well,
put our
Mark Elias,
pants on and rewind the clock once we get back in power, which hopefully,
Mark Elias was also essential in 2016 when Trump won by sweeping Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all of which we in the election protection movement thought were extremely dubious. There was an actual court decision in Michigan, prompted by Jill Stein, with my co-writer Bob Petrakis, and the judge said, yes, there is evidence that warrants a recount. This is in Michigan,
right.
2016. And
Yep.
and Mark Elias and his Hillary Clinton crew said, no, we don't want to recount. Can you imagine? I will never get over that. This is astounding to me.
Yeah.
LYNN Feinerman hasn't spoken. Go ahead, Lynn. And we're going to go another 13 minutes here. But this is the heart of the beast. We will have a full 2 hours next week to dive into an election protection summit. Hopefully, John Steiner will have some answers on how we're going to support who. And this was very good. T, thank you so much. We'll go to Lynn and then back to Mike Hersh and back through the list. Go ahead, Lynn Feinerman.
Yes, hi. One of the things that I deeply respect about T, and this will hold, is the meticulous attention to not only the details of how the heist is happening via Thiel and Musk and the entire network, but also how to really activate the public on this. And one of the things that T suggested is that there is a list, and she gives a list in one of their presentations in This Will Hold, of media who are perfectly capable of treating this subject and have not done it, including Democracy Now! And so I want to put that out. I'd like it if T could put that link in the chat so that we might look at pressuring the media to which we listen, not to deny this entire situation, and this entire subject. And that, when it includes Democracy Now!, it kind of gives you real pause for thought. Why have they not looked into this?
Midas touch is like the biggest part of my interruption, but they've, got the left, quote unquote, left market captured. Anytime a journalist leaves a network, they go to Midas and sign on. So now they're not talking about it because they're under the Midas umbrella. Well, Midas is running commercials for Larry Ellison. So for Oracle. So it's frustrating that the media won't cover it. We have started to see some big, like Seth Abramson, who's a big author and has a large presence, Jim Stewartson. Also, they've started actually coming out and flat out saying it. Okay, yes, it was stolen. It took them long enough to get there, but we're grateful that they're there now. And just the more we can build it. Sarah Kendzior, same thing. She's, she's like, duh, authoritarians steal elections. It's what they do. But if we could get Midas Touch, I mean, I think they've got 5 million people on their YouTube, and they're the largest presence. And like you said, Democracy Now! And some of these others, if we could get them to start talking about it and getting things put in place before the midterms, because we don't know. And then we don't know what they're going to do when it's time to start swearing people in. Are they even going to allow folks to take their seats in January? Because Trump knows what's coming for
Okay.
them.
All right, well,
that's a
let's
whole
deal
other
with the election. Let's deal with the
Okay.
election realities here. Mike, and then MYLA, and then Allison, and then Ray, and then we'll finish again with T, and we're going to move to Nukes. But go ahead, Mike, and then MYLA.
Sonny, you and T have made some very important points, and I just want to underscore them and kind of connect some dots that are kind of hanging out there. There's the Sherlock Holmes mystery, the dog that didn't bark. And the reason the dog didn't bark was that the person who committed the crime was known to the dog, and it was an inside job. And I also want to refer to the Mel Brooks comedy, The Producers, which was a play, a movie, and then another play that went on forever. The gist of that was these people figured out that if they insured the play against flopping and intentionally flopped, they'd make more money from a flop than a
Yeah.
hit. The Democrats, you have to be very specific. Democratic voters want to beat Republicans. There's no question about it. The candidates who are running want to win. There's no question about it. But there's this consultant class that get paid millions of dollars per month to go on TV shows and podcasts and wherever else and run their mouths and talk about how horrible Trump is and blah, blah, blah. There's no market for that if Trump isn't in office. There's no market in that if the Republicans don't control the Congress. And then, Sonny, like we were talking about, these hook and squeeze scams that Elias is involved with. He threatened the New York Times, do not run an article exposing this scam that puts money in my pocket. And my question for Elias and these other consultants is, how much money do you need to strangle our democracy and turn us over to a bunch of fascists? How many summer homes do you need? How big of a yacht do you need that
Really?
you will not tell the truth to your clients, to the American people, and stop lying, stop ripping off people who don't know better, stop lying to gain money, and stop losing elections on purpose, and stop letting the Republicans rig elections just so you can make money. I am accusing them of having a conflict of interest, and they should, none of them, be listened to until they come clean and go subject themselves to an audit, explain why they're involved in these super PACs that spend more money raising money than winning elections. And I am going to go right out and say this. I question their commitment to winning. They do not want to win. They are the producers. They are making more money by losing than winning. It's not ineptness. They are not stupid people. They don't make the same mistake 28 times in a row and say, oh,
Yeah,
well,
right.
we thought it'd be different this time. They know what they're doing. These are smart people. They're making
Right.
more money than anything. And somebody mentioned the Ellison family. The Ellison family and these other tech bros have got they're pulling the strings of the Carvilles, the Eliases, all these people. They rail against it. Oh, it's so terrible, blah, blah, blah. But then their hands out, they're getting paid by these people. They're at best controlled opposition, but they're
Right.
really shills. They're like people who go,
And you have to remember,
oh, go ahead.
Mike, you have to remember, what was the hit song in The Producers?
Which
Springtime
was,
for Hitler.
yeah, that was the whole
Remember
thing.
that? Springtime for Hitler. If this
they were
isn't springtime for Hitler, what is?
It's very ironic.
Yeah, and I just want to connect it also, not just to the consultants. We have Hakeem Jeffries coming
Yep.
out and saying that he's not for Medicare for all, for any kind of single payer system. And this is when it's already been proven that it can save us $1 trillion a year, you know, not even to mention the people it'll help.
Yeah,
which of course is-
150,000 people.
Yeah.
So
And
it saves lives and money, but it'll cost donors. So Hakeem Jeffries is with the donors and not with the
yeah, he gets
voters.
paid big bucks from PACs who are healthcare.
Okay, Myla,
And these hook and squeeze scams that Elias is implicated in.
Myla Reson, yes, that's right. Myla Reson, go ahead.
So it was T who brought up the Ellison family, and to Mike, to answer your question, but I'm wondering, T, you said that on Midas, the Ellison family, I think it's Oracle, advertises, but it's my understanding that YouTube channels do not have control over who the advertisers are unless they're actually putting their own advertisement within a video. So if, you know, if YouTube or some algorithm is sending an ad for Oracle or for the Ellison family, that is not under the control of the
Okay,
and
Right.
that's
It was
Okay.
one of those where they stopped midstream. They stopped
Oh,
what they were
okay.
talking about,
Thank you.
and
That
then
clarifies
talked
it.
about Oracle,
Oh,
and then went back
really?
to
Okay.
their regular programming. So it was them physically,
Yes,
talking about Oracle. So
I said absolutely, and yeah, that's awful. And they're very closely aligned with Mark Elias, and absolutely, and our hero Jessica Denson talks about how she left Midas because
Yeah.
that she couldn't talk about
she's
the
my girl. I love
well,
Jessica.
we can certainly talk about it here. Dorothy Reich has yet to speak, and then we're going to go back to Allison, Ray, and then T. So, Dorothy, go ahead.
Hi, have any of you seen the Ken Klippenstein leaked letter from Third Way? He put it out yesterday, and Third Way saying that they're blue or they're purple or sometimes they're red, and they said that DSA and the Democratic Socialists were not. This was not Scandinavian socialist, and this is Cuban socialism. So that's what we're dealing with our consultant class.
Yeah. Really? Well, okay, thank you,
But
Dorothy.
it's
Is there more?
Klippenstein was his Substack yesterday.
Who's Substack?
You don't know Ken Klippenstein?
No, but can you put his name in the chat?
Everybody needs to follow him.
absolutely.
Okay, good. Put his name up. We'll
Milo,
follow
can you put it in there because you're better at this stuff than me?
him.
Milo will put it in. for you
Easy
guys.
peasy. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dorothy, for that. Okay, we're gonna go back to Allison, then Ray, and then back to T, and then we're gonna go to nuclear power. Go ahead, Allison.
Okay, so I think that it's very interesting. I think that a lot of us are all on the same page. There is a reality, which is that we don't have free and fair elections. And the reality is that there's more than one way to steal an election. And one of the things that I'm very adamant about is have found the same personally, I've found the same experiences with Mark Elias. I actually had developed information that was potential evidence of election interference prior to the 2024 election. And I was contacting Mark Elias regularly before the 2024 election. And I used to joke that I now had developed a relationship with his receptionist because she couldn't understand why nobody was getting back to me. So I think it's the same exact kind of thing. And what I feel like is I want to kind of add to what you guys were talking about. I see Mark Elias as having actually manufactured the narrative that is actually limiting us from actually being able to fight for our elections. Because one of the things is I see it that there's two different lanes. There's one lane that screams from the rooftops that there is massive election fraud. Okay. Then there's the other lane, which Mark Elias has kind of architected and leads, which says, no, we took Trump to court 60 different times, and Trump was never able to produce any evidence of fraud. So he's kind of made this kind of false connection or equivalency that says because Trump did not bring evidence into court, there is no fraud. We have free and fair elections and safe elections. And the reality is that there's a middle lane that Mark Elias will not allow anybody to take, I believe, which is, hey, I agree. I agree that we have massive election fraud. The only thing is that all of my evidence points to three different individuals. And the reality is that Jack Smith literally said that the conspiracy that Donald Trump was the head of was violating the voting rights of the people. And so all of the evidence goes to Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. So while Donald Trump actually screams at the top of his lungs that there's massive election fraud, instead of the Democrats simply turning around and saying, we agree. Here's the evidence. They refuse to look for evidence. They refuse to acknowledge any evidence that our elections are being manipulated. And instead, they take the hard stand. Nope, we took you to court. You couldn't prove it. Why would Trump go into court with evidence of his own scheme or conspiracy that he's been indicted for? It really is, to me, Mark Elias is actually leading us down that alternate path.
Right. And they're also, squeezing billions of dollars in donations that go
Correct.
straight into the consultant class that uses that money to raise more money and not to win
Correct.
elections. Ray
And
Lutz and then T. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Alyssa,
oh,
finish your thought.
I actually had a separate thought that maybe since Ray's going to be speaking to, I just wanted to give a little bit of a real life example of what I actually believe may be connected to putting in fraudulent voters. And recently we had some news, I don't know if you saw the news, that New Jersey announced that they found approximately 6,000 non-citizens on their voter rolls, of which 400 had actually voted in the 2024 election. And one of the things is that I personally do not believe that non-citizens are actually lining up and putting in voter registrations. What could be happening is bad actors creating fraudulent voter registrations in the names that look like of non-citizens. And what they do is, I think that, T kind of talks, we have a little bit of different interpretations of
Okay.
banks, but the 6,000 is a bank where they can actually take whatever votes they need from New Jersey and cast them appropriately. So to me, this was actually a brave move by New Jersey because they're taking their voter rolls and saying, whatever politics wise, these are not people who belong on the voter rolls, and we're taking them off. And I just want to see all of the states kind of standing up. And we can't say, well, those are people who are being, you know, um, are being, because of the color of the skin, they're being taken off the rolls. They just don't legally exist in that world. And so
Okay.
they shouldn't be on the rolls.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. Ray Lutz and then T.
Well, there's different schools of thought, and one is we shouldn't need voter registration at all. I mean, there's an idea that there's this mechanism where you have to get there in time and get your name in, and if you're 30 days within the election, then you can't do it, and we're going to purge you, and there's so much purging and mechanism going on. I mean, ask Greg Palast about this. That's what he's really researched. There's and when they've actually looked into the scams that go on with purging, they find that a lot of these are the same people. No, actually, they were two different people, and the names can be the same a lot. it has been it's been a problem. So we got to be careful. The other thing I learned was that there's a lot of turnover. You know, you say voter rolls, you think of they're just static. Oh no. It's at least a third of the people, like in some place like Las Vegas, a third of the people come in and go every time. On the order of 300,000 people both come in and leave that town. And it's really hard to keep up the voter rolls. So if you say, well, there's a few extras on there, of course there are, because just keeping up with it means you have a huge staff. But you know what? This election denier thing, we got to be careful about saying people are election deniers. I think it's a bad habit. And we should let people, if they want to, say, I don't want to concede right now. I want to see how it comes out because, you know, there's no legal reason that you have to concede. Yet it's always done, especially people on the left say, oh, she didn't concede right away. She's a, you know, or they're you know, sour grapes and so forth. And that's bad. Instead of saying, and Harris didn't do anything. I watched in Clinton do nothing in as I watched the hand count in Detroit, I was there, and you had the Trump people arguing about each ballot and so forth, and the Trump attorney sat there silent. I'm going, what are they doing? You know, it's difficult. We have a difficult problem here of a kind of, I know, political correctness about you can't say certain things about the election not being exactly right. This is all what we're talking about, and of course we can. But I found this is true. I used to get covered every single day working on other activism things. New York Times, Guardian, everybody was covering me pretty much every day. When I got into election integrity, nobody would cover it. It was all of a sudden, okay, we don't want to cover that at all. And it was stunning. But you know, we got to avoid the ballot marking devices. Some left-wing organizations say, "Oh, we like those ballot marking devices. We like QR codes and barcodes." What are you talking about? We want hand-marked paper ballots because then you see the whole ballot. You can verify what the person was shown, and you can't when you have those ballot marking devices. And then scan them. And I think for something as critical as a presidential contest, we ought to have hand counting of that contest. You know, we should have. That's not too hard, but every contest is overwhelming for people to do. But this is such a critical, and now with congressional seats, let's hand count those congressional seats, at least a good sample of them. You
And
know,
not put them
so-
through an electronic system to report them. They should be reported by telephone. We did that for over 50 years and it worked out. However,
Oh
it
yeah,
worked out.
but the danger is those people can lie too. So we got to have redundant systems. I don't mind having the computers report, but you got to have redundant systems to be able to do it. They still are using the AP, I think, still does use telephone reporting to get their numbers. But still, if you say we're going to hand count all the ballots, or we're going to total them into a spreadsheet and then
Yeah.
add up the spreadsheet. In Maricopa County, they were doing this in that recount. They had 60,000 lines in their spreadsheet. And it's a lot to get, you can get wrong by putting those numbers in. You call in and you're going to call in those numbers, then you've got thousands and thousands of call-ins that can be made mistakes. It's easy. So the call-ins, you got to think that through because everything has a trade-off. Okay, everything is a trade-off. Nothing is perfect. You've got to say, well, this will do better. And machines did help when they first brought them out, but those can be hacked too. And paper is good, but it can be hacked too. And so there isn't any absolute perfect. We have to keep working. And I say hand marked paper ballots is king. Hand counting key contests. And it may come to that the presidential contest maybe just needs to be handled separately as a hand counting thing completely because it's just too hard. And the reason is you have artificial intelligence. You've heard the reports. They're starting to get together in swarms, make their own plans. You can just have someone say, we want you to work on this and, you know, do the right thing for your benefit. AI may say, I like an authoritarian leader because they're going to help me live. And so then you're going to have the AI actually doing stuff that no one is really in control of and is malicious as well.
Yeah.
So
Another
anyway, that's
thing
Go ahead. I'm kind of done. So thank you for
Okay,
covering all this
great.
today.
Thank you. I
And
just wanted
I love
to,
everyone involved here. Allison, you're doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. It's not my cup of tea to work on that thing, but keep going.
yeah, I just want to clarify one thing. Lynn Surham on the chat indicated that New Jersey acknowledged that 400 votes were cast by non-citizens, but over a 6 to 7 year period, not in one election. I think it's important
Thank you for
to
that.
get that clear. Thank you.
Is it my turn? Am I done? Okay,
Yep,
so
yep.
I was actually going to say that it was over a period of time, and also I think sometimes folks forget that some states have automatic registration when you get your driver's license, and non-citizens have driver's license, and so if they're getting registered to vote because they got a driver's license, again, you know, even the Heritage Foundation, if you go on their site and you plug in from 1982 to now, you know, well, now it's more than 100 now, but as of 2 months ago, there were less than 100 cases of non-citizens voting within their own database. And so they've been investigating it for years. Again, we know this is just the Republicans doing everything they can to prevent folks from being able to vote. We know it's baloney, and we just have to keep hammering them on it, and that the SAVE Act is actually a voter suppression bill. And then everybody just stay tuned for next Sunday, because I think this new
Well, yes,
site.
put your link in for next Sunday in the chat, and then join us. And when you're on your call next Sunday, tell everybody on that call and provide them with our URL so they can join us on Monday.
Okay, I don't have the Zoom link for it yet, so I'll just put my Substack in there so that you
All
guys
right.
jump on
But when
there.
you do your call next Sunday, please include our link because
Yes,
we'll follow you the next day.
for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And Sonny, real quick, I'd like to have
Please.
T showed a really descriptive graphic of all the different ways that the vote count can be led astray or hacked or whatever. And T, if you could just walk us through that, because I think it would help people understand why, you know, we're very vulnerable.
I think if somebody could pop it back up in the screen,
What was this? The
the red and yellow.
oh, there
Yeah.
you go. Thanks,
Okay.
Mom.
So we're gonna talk about this
And
next. Oh, that one's got
Steve,
my picture on it.
please watch for John Geisman. He should be joining us.
I actually sent you guys the wrong one because our photos, I was on a group call on this one, and our photos are at the bottom of it. I don't know how I managed to do that, but it just follows the path of the vote so that folks understand that, first of all, ES&S does actually have equipment that is equipped with modems. They got caught doing that. They got caught lying about it. And then, whoops. And then how the vote moves either via modem or the smart card flash drive. All of these points are vulnerable. And the most recent CISA report that came out that was from 2019 to 2024 that they just released, I think it was on the 12th, talks about how vulnerable our election equipment is. All of a sudden the screen went black. Sorry. Okay, and so it goes from the smart drive over to the election management system, whether it's ES&S or Dominion. And so from all of that area where it's black, all of that is what we would see if we had a precinct level hack, whether it was tabulators, you know, anything with the modem on the left side where all the black writing is. So we would, if we did a hand count audit and they use this method, we should be able to catch them. When we get beyond that, where it's red and we're into the post tabulation, this is where we have the issue, because where it says attack vector, they are taking the data after tabulation and manipulating it and making it what they want. And so it's not going to match at the precinct level, but if you are doing a precinct level audit, you're not going to catch them because it's a post tabulation attack. And this is where, like we said, DDHQ, right there where it says Edison, SSRS, election. I'm pointing at the screen like y'all can see me. Sorry. Right there in that yellow box, DDHQ should be in there as well. And they're the ones that it looks like they have right access. And we think that they've been infiltrated, the cybersecurity team. And we talked about it at length yesterday. So at any rate, we're going to be putting these packets together for the state attorneys general. And then we're going to have the call in the bigger room because we're recruiting volunteers. We're going to have area captains, and we're going to do phone banking. And so teaching folks, it's not hard. Just pick a stream to watch. And if you see votes starting to move backwards, that's how you know. Voting is an additive process. We should not be seeing millions of votes coming out of the system. If you see something that looks strange, write down the network that you're on, the time that it occurred, and approximately how many votes disappeared. And then we're going to provide them with a place to send us all the information. But everybody that sees it happening, we want thousands of people to start calling, the secretaries of state and the state attorneys general. We cannot let another election go unchallenged if they attempt this again. We just can't. So that's, I feel like this is like our last stand with this, with these midterms, and it's scary to think about, but we're doing everything we can. So old school phone tree, ring those phones.
thank
I've
you.
been in legislators' offices when the phones are ringing off the hook, and it drives them crazy. Emails, I'm not a big fan. It's too easy to hit the delete
Okay.
button. Calling. So, okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Hey,
So-
thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You've been fabulous. We expect to see you next week. Do announce the GREEP call on your town hall on Sunday and invite everybody to join. And we'll be using the same link that we're using for this one. Okay?
Harvey?
Yes,
People had
Steve Caruso,
question-
go ahead. I think we're
People
going to be joined by John Geisman. We have 57 people with us, and we're going to move into the world of nuclear power. Remember, nuclear power is Trump power. But go ahead, Steve Caruso, then we can go to John Geisman.
Yeah, people were wondering how Allison got her voter rolls, and she's getting them free from the states, I understand. Is it FOIA requests as well, Allison?
Yeah, so we do FOIA requests to the county level, at the county level, and we also do the FOIA requests to the state. And one of the differences between the voter roll information that I'm asking for versus what, for example, the Trump administration asks for, is the Trump administration is asking for things like social security numbers, driver's licenses. I don't need any of that. I'm only asking for the public data that they actually, through Freedom of Information Act, have to supply. And that gives us a ton of information. So it's both county and state. And you can usually go to your supervisor of elections website at the county level, look for a public records request, and put in a request for the voter rolls if you wanted. And that's what we've been doing for 2 years.
And one last thing before John comes up is we had a guest on who has a site called CSAY, Andrea Miller. Maybe T, you've heard of her, and I put the link in the chat already. I'll put it in again. If anything weird about the elections, you can put a report in there too. Maybe you two can work together and coordinate your activities. Thanks.
Well, you're all great. T, thank you so much, Allison. You'll be back next week for our summit, Election Protection and Grassroots Organizing. Ray Lutz, you're a national treasure. Thank you so much. Mike and Steve, thank you for your input. Dorothy Reich, MYLA RESON, LYNN FEINERMAN. This is a pretty amazing session we just had here. And we will, traditionally, before the internet and early voting, it was always said that nothing really mattered in an election until Labor Day. So we've got 1 more week or 2 more weeks for that. And so let's do what we got to do. So we're going to see everybody back next week for a full 2 hours. We got 56 people now, and I'm sure that T will bring more from your Sunday gig, Allison. Spread it over the internet. Next week is the summit on election protection and relational organizing. And John Steiner, you'll of course be with us. Okay, everybody, we're going to move now to the dreaded world of nuclear power. Remember, nuclear power is Trump power. We have two of the greatest, most important experts on and activists on nuclear power in the country with us. John Geisman is speaking to us somewhere in California, from somewhere in California. Nobody knows more about the inner workings of the California Public Utilities Commission than John Geisman, or about the future of Diablo Canyon. And we are prompted to have him specifically in this session because of a remark that Gavin Newsom made about Diablo Canyon beyond 2030. Now, for those of you who aren't following Diablo Canyon's every moment, and believe me, I am, people like to say I do my work because I'm altruistic. I am totally self-interested. I live downwind of Diablo Canyon. If anything happens to Diablo Canyon, me and my wife and my children and my grandchildren are totally vulnerable, zero insurance, zero accountability. This is, very, very up close and personal for me, aside from the fact that I was arrested there in 1984. Lovely 3 nights in the Diablo Canyon and in the San Luis Obispo County Jail. And anybody wants to join me there again, I'll see you at the plant gates. And then we are also joined by Kevin Camps, co-host of the California Solartopia Show and the executive director of Don't Waste Michigan, who's up against it and has just filed a major lawsuit on Palisades in Michigan. So let's start with John Geisman. John, as criminologists of the Newsom administration, tell us, please, what Gavin Newsom said that kind of raised our eyebrows.
Well, he said that he wasn't going to take a position on the proposal to extend the plant beyond 2030, that he was going to leave that for the next guy. And he's in the midst right now of an extraordinarily controversial negotiation with all three utilities and the insurance industry in Sacramento over the level of wildfire liability bailout that the state will provide.
By all three utilities, you mean the three major utilities in California, which is PG&E, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. Does not include my utility, which is Department of Water Power in LA. But go ahead.
Yeah, your utility already has its own fire problems.
Yeah, as we see, I a few months ago was living in our house in LA, and 3 miles to the west was the Palisades fire, and 3 miles to the east was the Altadena fire. So that was not a lot of fun, but and no insurance to speak of. So go ahead, John. What do you think what Newsom says about Diablo Canyon speaks to the future of the plant?
Well, I think that it means it's going to be teed up front and center for Governor Becerra, assuming he wins the election, when he comes in and staffs up his administration. PG&E has emphasized they need an early judgment from the legislature because they need to order fuel if they're going to operate beyond 2030. The current legislation would have the plant shut down, first unit 1 in 2029, October of 2029, and then unit 2 in October of 2030. So in order to make use of the license extension that PG&E received from the NRC, they need the state's approval. Question is, under what terms the state would provide that approval. And Governor Newsom said that he wasn't going to get drawn into that issue. He had enough on his plate, and he emphasized that he's got a sell-by date later this year, so that it's the next guy's problem.
Yes, and that's actually good news for us. It means that this governor, who I cannot describe in terms that can go out over YouTube, is stopped the stabbing in the back at 2030. The two reactors at Diablo, he signed an agreement in 2016 that they would shut in 24 and 25. they should have been shut more than a year ago. But thanks to his sellout to PG&E, they're still operating. Now you're saying that the bill on the current arrangement with the Assembly and I guess the CP, California Public Utilities Commission, is that they're to shut in 29 and 30 unless something happens. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I don't think I'd put, I mean, you make it sound as if it is likely they will shut. I think I would, as a betting man, take the opposite of that view, given some recognition of our legislature and the complete inability of state government to deal with PG&E. That they are simply outsmarted, outfoxed, outgunned at every step along the way. So I think the likelihood is that it will extend unless the public rises up in complete disgust and revulsion and says, no, no more of this.
Well, but the point is that the Assembly, the legislature, will have to do something, pass some kind of legislation to allow them to continue past 29 and 30. Is that right?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
So
And
they have to take action.
The logic will be, we need all the electricity we can get. This is a key component of our climate change strategy, and it will save ratepayers billions and billions and billions of dollars.
But the opposite is true.
The exact opposite is true on each of those points.
So the question then is, how do we produce the document that will show how much money California will lose by continuing to operate these plants?
You know, I produce documents every year. Documents are not going to win this war. You need to convey your disgust and revulsion to people that count.
Or they actually care about your disgust and revulsion.
Yeah, let me give you an example of the last time when in 2022, Governor Newsom persuaded the legislature at the very end of the legislative session that it really needed to act quickly because PG&E had a rare opportunity to get federal grant money to subsidize the operation of the plant. And there was a deadline involved. So all the state needed to do was extend a bridge loan to PG&E. The loan for $1.4 billion, well, it would be forgivable, but we'd still call it a loan. The loan would be fully offset by the $1.4 billion PG&E stood to get from the federal government. In fact, PG&E would be the only applicant for this particular tranche of grant funding, so it was a sure thing. The floor manager in the state Senate read out the same statement that the governor's cabinet secretary had made to the state assembly several days earlier, said $1.4 billion grant, $1.4 billion loan, no risk to the state. 2 days later, the bill's passed, the governor signs the bill, PG&E turns in its grant application. Grant application is only for $1.1 billion. They fleeced the state general fund for $300 million.
Why did the Feds not come up with, why did Biden and the Feds shortchange the state?
That's a different story. And the University of California, Santa Barbara did a research paper on that. They claim that PG&E inflated its $1.1 billion grant application by something on the order of $341 million, stuff that could not be justified. And as a consequence of this $1.4 billion loan from the state general fund, there's $659 million missing. Now, what kind of business is able to stay in business, let alone go back to the state with its tin cup held outstanding, said, give us more money, like PG&E. I mean, most people would say, I refuse to do business with somebody like that. The governor's got a business background. He ran a wine store for a long time. I'm not certain that he'd extend credit to a customer that had stiffed him like PG&E has stiffed the general fund. How's the rest of the legislature feel? That's what will determine next year when the bill comes up again.
When does the vote come up that will decide whether a PG&E orders new fuel to go into the 2030s?
PG&E originally said they needed a decision in 2026. Obviously, that didn't happen. And the governor's equivocation was a big assist in making certain that didn't happen. Is it 2027? I think PG&E would tell you that. I don't know. I don't know the provisions in their existing fuel supply contracts. I don't know how difficult it is to accelerate an order. I don't know how much fuel they need for their next round.
Jeez.
None of this is public information.
Well, if anybody would know, you would. So if you don't know, then it's not public information. Is that correct?
No, and I would assure you the legislature doesn't know and won't know, but will nevertheless be asked to write a big check to PG&E. Now let's take the opposite view. Let's say that Diablo Canyon was a power plant or any other depreciable asset owned by PG&E. PG&E wouldn't get all of these candy bars and cookies financially from the taxpayer. They would get a rate of return on their capital invested. The fact that the plant is fully depreciated is a lot like the hydroelectric system in California. As a public utility, PG&E has to operate that hydroelectric system even though it is fully depreciated. Would they operate Diablo Canyon if they were restricted to only earning what they do for every other utility asset? I don't know, but they ought to be asked that question.
Wow. So here we are, these two atomic reactors, 45 miles from the San Andreas Fault, surrounded by earthquake zones, and we don't know when they're going to have to order new fuel. And the one thing we do know is that solar is cheaper.
No question about that. And I can tell you the second thing we do know is that battery storage has saved the state from whatever reliability crisis frightened the state in 2022 and is proceeding like gangbusters, linked up with solar energy to provide a much cheaper source of electricity than any other alternative available in California.
Well, Robert Freeling, who's a very deep expert there, tells me that in the state of California, there is 7 times more battery storage than capacity at Diablo Canyon. Is
Yeah,
that 7
that's
times?
today, and there is no supply area expanding more rapidly than batteries. In large part because you've got so much renewable curtailment in the middle of the day when we can't use all of the solar that we generate. So you've got to have some place to put it. Otherwise, you've got to shut down the solar facility, and batteries are stepping into that gap.
So how much would California save per year if Diablo just flat out shut down?
Well, they forecast in 2027 that it will cost us $595 million extra to have Diablo running. That's PG&E's forecast. That's not my number. If you add that to the amount of operating deficit Diablo Canyon has experienced since the Newsom legislation went into effect, it sums to $1.7 billion in the first 3 years of extended operation. If you look at the 5-year period that PG&E was forced to disclose in its federal grant application, the above market costs for the 5 years between 2017 and 2021 accrued to about 2.1 billion. So this inability to recover your operating costs through market revenues has plagued Diablo Canyon for a lengthy period of time.
It's staggering.
Why would anybody voluntarily enter into this kind of agreement? Ask Gavin.
Well, he's leaving, and he has the word they've used on Gavin's action at Diablo Canyon is punt. Apparently, he's punted. We have with
Yeah.
us Kevin Camps, a great nuclear expert. We also have Ray Lutz, who was a key player in the shutdown of San Onofre. So we'll go to Kevin if you want to link this to Palisades, Kevin, but you also know a ton about Diablo, and then we'll let Ray Lutz jump in here. Also, Dr. Nancy Marparco, like me, is downwind of Diablo and is totally terrified. Speaking for you, Nancy, there. Okay, Kevin Camps, tell us how this all plays in. And we still have
Hey, Harvey,
51
if
people
this
here.
so
Oh,
doesn't
no,
work, I
Kevin.
hope somebody will. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, but you turn off your video because that sometimes interferes, and I may have to go directly to Ray. Can you speak now, Kevin? Kevin, you're breaking up on us there. Are you better now, Kevin
Can you hear me
Camp?
now?
Yes, better. Go
I hope
ahead.
so. I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
So,
can.
it's amazing to listen to. It's amazing to listen to John talk about Diablo because there's so many similarities with Palisades. The financial shenanigans that have gone on for several years now. I'd just like to remind everybody Biden and Jennifer Granholm played a big role at both Diablo and Palisades.
And these are all Democrats in
Granholm
both.
was the Wizard of Oz.
Kevin, you're
Yeah.
breaking up.
Well, the timing of 22 was Newsom and Whitmer were both thinking about jumping into the presidential race because it wasn't clear who was going.
Kevin,
Did
you're breaking up.
unfortunately, and then presidential run. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do unless on my
If you've
unmute my
got too
laptop.
many apps, anything on your phone that's not being used, shut it off except for the Zoom.
Okay, let's come back to
I'll
Kevin
try
very
that.
quickly. Kevin, you there? Ray Lutz, we'll come back to Kevin. Ray Lutz, this all sounds familiar to you, I assume, having helped shut down San Onofre. How do we take the victory at San Onofre and turn it into a victory at Diablo Canyon?
Well, that's a good question. It's an honor to be seeing John again as we work so many days and hours on the San Onofre debacle. We did get that to shut down, and I think that they basically saw the light. We had so many people coming out to the meetings and protesting and so forth, and once it's shut down, then it's kind of an easier thing to not get it to restart. Diablo Canyon isn't quite shut down yet, and yet, you know, if you actually look at the numbers, and I have done this, it's completely a upside down economic, equation. These plants are very profitable for the companies that run them, but they can't produce power to compete with the renewables that are out there. And John is absolutely right. I've been watching the information about the new batteries that are coming out, and they're really getting strong now. So this is one of the big transitions in technology, is getting the battery technology to improve and eliminate the concept that solar isn't any good, and because it's not always, the sun's not always up and the wind isn't always blowing, because solar is so cheap and easy to operate that it has to be the long-term leader of these things. And wind is cheaper, but it does it's an active system. But how to get it to shut down, man, if you look at the history of this thing, it's really incredible how, the Sierra Club buckled under, and that started Friends of the Earth. And then there's been so many good people fighting against this thing. And in that area, they have the Mothers for
Others
Peace,
for peace, yeah.
and they've been very strong in fighting this. That's really kind of like the only thing that I've been able to see that it might work, because certainly the Democratic Party, they're just swimming in money from these utility companies. They don't want to cut it off. And LA is a good example where there's so much money coming in, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and the DNC does not want to cut it off. None of the people there will speak out against these things. It's difficult.
Well, Ray, if you can produce for us the definitive document showing the losses for continuing to operate Diablo Canyon, we would be forever in your debt. We need that. I've been talking to Greg Palast about it. And Bob Freeling and Linda Seeley. We need the definitive document that we can go to, put it in the op-eds to show how much California will save when Diablo shuts. I think we can win this.
Maybe if we do it in some sort of a comic or something, it might have some legs, some kind of like short little meme or something, because it can't be too complex for people to get it, but it's pretty simple. I mean, basically these plants, what they do is they get to charge this operational O&M, operation and management expenses, and that they just get to pull out of the ratepayers all the time. And also the upgrades. So they've always got the upgrades, the new refinement, the new power line, et cetera, that they're working on. And because they don't really get to make that much money on the actual, they're not making any money on the power coming out of these things. They wrap money around every kilowatt hour that comes out of those things. And so they have to make it up other ways with all of these, safety problems are galore. And the trouble with these, you can't fight them on safety. It's against the law. The federal law says that no one can say anything about the safety of these extremely unsafe plants.
Well, let me repeat the sentence. Let me repeat the most terrifying sentence spoken in the American language in many years. Ready? Okay. Donald Trump is the sole authority on regulating nuclear power, safety, and health issues at the moment. Because the Slaughter decision from the Supreme Court says that the president can remove anybody from any regulator from any regulatory commission without cause. Therefore, any member of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission who's going to find a problem with Diablo Canyon or any other nuclear plant is going to be removed by Donald Trump.
Well, remember, these commissions are never for finding problems. They're a defensive wall for the utilities against anyone trying to stop them. So they've erected these courtroom procedures that you have to follow, and these commissions and stuff. They're not there to help us. They're there to defend the utilities in their position. That's all. So
yeah.
no. So I don't think really Trump can do anything by firing these people. They're already inept, and
it's redundant. No. It's redundant to fire them, but we can win this.
It's still scary.
We can win this with a definitive economic document. Now, my understanding is
I'll look into it.
No, don't look into it. Get it done, please. Ray, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to harass you and John. That you'll have to call and have an anti-stalking legislation against me because we need to get this done to prove once and for all within the next couple of months. If we can get it to Becerra and then get action and block the legislation that they need to get new fuel, we can shut the plant. I mean, this is the moment. And if we can stop the refueling, which the legislature can do and the governor can do, then we can shut Diablo Canyon before 2030, for God's sakes. So that's imperative on us. And you two guys with Bob Freeling, you and Gene Coyle, and I got Greg Pallas signed up. We need to produce this document. So I'm going to be on your case, please, and we can win this. And I know, Linda Seeley and Jane Swanson and everybody else will be forever with us as well. So and you're who do you work with, John? The woman.
I represent the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility.
Rochelle Becker.
Right.
Rochelle Becker, that's the name I was looking for. We can get this done, guys. We got to do it. So I want to start drafting tomorrow to get the document that will persuade the legislators and the new governor to prevent the next fueling.
Meanwhile, I have a suggestion.
Wait. John was going to say something. Then go ahead, Lynn.
Let me give
John?
you an example
And then
of,
Lynn, and then David. Go ahead.
of the limitation of, I guess, the reading skills of the state regulators. In 2023, which was the first proceeding the PUC conducted after the Newsom legislation had been enacted, the PUC came to the conclusion, because of a lot of documents that the interveners filed, that PG&E had not included all of its costs in its forecast, and that as a consequence, the PUC lacked the evidentiary record to make a determination of cost effectiveness, reasonableness, or the prudence of continued operation of Diablo Canyon. Pretty good definitive conclusion of law. Conclusion of law number 15 is what it's referred to. In the next 3 annual review proceedings, the Public Utilities Commission has ruled as out of scope that very question.
Oh, God.
The various interveners have tried to raise cost effectiveness, reasonableness, and prudence as issues, and the commission has consistently said, no, that's out of scope. We don't have time to look at that. So you're talking about more than needing words on a page.
Yeah.
You need to strike the fear of God in some of these legislators.
Well, I'll be talking to God later tonight.
I just want to
And
say,
she'll have a lot to say about that.
okay, I just want to say that I'm thinking that we need to put the second proposition on the California ballot. This was ruled to be closed by 2024 by the people of California. They voted in either an initiative or a proposition. We need to do it again. And we need to write it this time so that no governor and nobody who has a financial interest can interfere in the will of the people of California.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, so I hope you get her on the phone and maybe bring her on your radio show. Okay, Dave Saltman, and then we'll go back MYLA, and then Vina.
I just raised my hand to say that Kevin is on his laptop now, and he may be able to.
Oh, good. All right.
Try to call on him as well.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Let's go Saltman, and then we'll go back to Kevin, and we'll go to Vina. But
I
Dave
just
Saltman
had
and then Kevin Camps.
Question. Where is it written that the ownership of public utilities has to be private companies? Why?
I think that's the 11th commandment.
No, it isn't. It was not this way until it was.
Well, some of them aren't, and some of them that are publicly owned do quite well, and they've gotten rid of their nuclear plants.
Well, the point is it eliminates the profit motive as an excuse for not doing the right thing.
Well, there has been an attempt to take over PG&E's territory in San Francisco, and that continues as a war to this day.
Can I say that, the Palo Verde nuclear power plant is operated by the state of Arizona, by their public utility. And the city of Los Angeles is a co-owner along with the public utility in New Mexico. It's primarily publicly owned. And it's a horrible nuclear power plant in the desert in Arizona that generates high-level radioactive waste at a rate higher than any other nuclear plant in the country, and it evaporates 27,000 gallons of water every minute of every day to keep those three giant reactors from blowing up. So it doesn't necessarily follow that just because it's publicly operated that they're going to do the right thing.
Okay,
Unfortunately.
that's 100% true. Yeah, unfortunately. Kevin Camps, are you back with us? Can you
hear me?
speak? Yeah, now we
Can you hear
got
me?
you. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I put some stuff in the chat about
Yeah.
Palisades. Before, I was just saying that the overlaps, the similarities between Palisades and Diablo are quite remarkable. The financial shenanigans that have taken place at both the federal and the state levels, right down to the technical issues. Palisades and Diablo Canyon Unit 1 are among the 4 worst neutron embrittled reactor pressure vessels in the United States. Palisades is the worst. Point Beach in Wisconsin, also on Lake Michigan, is the 2nd worst. And Diablo Canyon Unit 1 is the 4th worst, still operating. Luckily, Indian Point Unit 3, I think it was, is permanently closed.
It's permanently shut. Diablo Unit 3 at
Although
Indian Point.
Holtec, the idea of has put forward the idea of restarting Indian Point Units 2 and 3 for the small price tag of $10 billion with a B of public money. What I was about to put in the chat is that Palisades Holtec has gotten 1.5 Department of Energy, and one of the chat posts is an admission by Holtec's contractor, Framatome of France, that Palisades can only operate for 14 months until the risk of steam generator tube burst will increase exponentially. They're saying it's all going to be fine for those 14 months, but all of a sudden at 14 months, they're going to have to shut down and inspect. The previous owner of Palisades said the steam generators needed to be replaced in their entirety 20 years ago. So as soon as they fire up Palisades, it is at risk of a Chernobyl or a Fukushima, and they're going to load fuel next month, September. They're required by contract to start generating electricity by next March. It's the perfect storm of nuclear risk. We just filed lawsuits at the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. and in Cincinnati, trying to preserve the 4.5 years of resistance we've mounted against the restart of Palisades, which is the precedent that's being followed by Duane Arnold in Iowa, by 3 Mile Island Unit 1 in Pennsylvania, and in some respects by Diablo. Palisades Holtec was the first to apply for those nuclear.
Well, we need to link your lawsuit on Holtec and Palisades with the legal actions at Diablo Canyon. My understanding is Holtec has proposed to refloat the Titanic and to start going back and forth between New York and London, but that's a different story. The bottom line here is that we're at the brink on both these plants, and the economics in both cases are catastrophic for the public, even under the best circumstances. I want to mention very quickly also, Ray and John, you guys have raised batteries, and Kevin, you're on top of it too. We are at a major transition point, tipping point in battery technology from lithium to sodium. And, there's a rap against lithium, which is very, very unfortunately appropriate because we had this terrible fire at Morro Bay where, where was the fire in California? Not Morro Bay. It was
Moss Landing.
Moss Landing. So that was really spread a lot of lithium contamination. And so I know that when we talk about batteries, we get hammered with the problems with lithium. The batteries that are going to finally replace Diablo Canyon are going to be sodium. sodium or aluminum. They're not going to be lithium. And that's a very big deal. Even though lithium has plummeted in price because of two major finds in California. But we have everything in a row now. We have the cost, we have the technology, both at Palisades being led here by Kevin and at Diablo. And it's imperative on us that we win this. And so you're right, John, the documents alone aren't going to do it. But if we can start getting the op-ed pages to say, well, Diablo's more expensive, and then we can go to the legislature with that. I mean, the good news is the governor is leaving. He's punted as he's left, and the assembly has to take action. And if the assembly is going to have, if the legislature has to take action, then we can make them. They're going to have to vote, and we have the ammunition to go in there, and we have, I guess, a few months. So we've got to win this now. You know, Tatanka, I know you're going to agree.
Yeah, I agree that just that one doc won't do it. But being specific and creative, and I don't want to do it right now because we're running out of time. But on what
we'll go to 420 today. So
what we want to present is the savings that everybody will have from the money that they're being soaked for. The saving, maybe add up all the years, maybe talk about, do we deserve a refund? Is that going to come from the people who pocketed that money? Is PG&E responsible for repaying us? I don't know if any of this is legal, but it can be very creative when people can really see clearly that we've been soaked. I'm not going to take it anymore. What's the film? I mean, we can have all kinds of, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. Everybody at one particular time yells out their window or whatever they yell out. I mean, we can have fun with this, but be specific about how it will benefit them. And, I mean, it'd be crazy if the money that is being soaked up, we need to go to every single legislature and say, we want you on record, you're voting against this, or else, I don't know, maybe all this money could create a fund, an imaginary fund to run candidates against them, like PDA is doing with progressive candidates. Let's have fun with the alternative. We'll make it really clear that there's no other position to take other than what we're saying to the people, and say, this is what this is what we're going to do. We're going to vote you out of office.
Well, that's what we got to do. And Ray, and we've got major victories in California. We shut Rancho Seco, we shut San Onofre, we got Humboldt down. We're going to build 6 reactors in Bakersfield. I remember that very clearly. Then they said, well, maybe we don't have enough water.
Hey, John, I have a question for John.
John Geisman, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, is there anything we can do about the money, or is it just legally impossible? Of all the money that we've been soaked for, is there any recovery we can get to get back to the people, or to get to, I mean, fanciful to get it to candidates that will run against them, but
there's been discussion in Sacramento, largely by Senator John Laird, who was a sponsor of the prior extension, but he's talking about requiring the payback of the missing $659 million before any further extension is considered.
That's good.
PG&E CEO has said, well, no, the taxpayers ought to eat that. And Laird, at least initially, has been pretty strong in saying, no way, you pay this back, and you pay it back before we consider anything else.
And let's make clear that John Laird is from San Luis Obispo, and he's no anti-nuker, for God's sake.
Not at all.
Not at all. So it's the money. We got to get them on the money. The question is there a lawsuit? Is there a class action lawsuit that could be based on the finances?
I got to tell you, Harvey, having been turned down at the Court of Appeal, the mothers were turned down at the Court of Appeal. They were also turned down at the Supreme Court. We chose not to go to the Supreme Court because we thought it was hopeless. The courts aren't willing to step into this. They regard this as a matter that's too technical, too complex, and we have a state agency, the Public Utilities Commission, designed in the state constitution to resolve these kinds of questions. So no, the courts aren't really an open avenue for us.
So what is? Where do we go?
The legislature.
All right.
And how soon does that Laird bill come up?
It'll be next year.
Okay.
You know, where everything's done this year, I believe. But beginning in January, they'll start up again.
What,
And
by
the
then,
new
by the
governor is
way-
going to have a big say.
Sorry?
Who will?
The new governor, Governor Becerra.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got to get to this guy. And, you know, by then, by the way, in January, we're expecting that balcony solar will be legal in California. And there will be millions, as there were in Germany, there will be millions of homeowners in California and apartment dwellers, including me, who are going to be dropping their electric usage by at least 20%. I mean, you know, that's going to be one of the biggest purchases of solar panels in history when California allows balcony solar, as has happened in Utah and at least 4 other states. So, you know, Carl Grossman, tell us what happened with the money at Shoreham when Shoreham was confronting these issues.
Well, the people of Long Island are stuck with more than $7 billion. They're going to have to pay that over coming years. Let me point out some other things.
On that.
Here is the Newsday, which is a major newspaper in Long Island. It's the newspaper in Long Island. This is yesterday's big story on Newsday. Let me read it. New York's nuclear option. Opposition to nuclear plants is softening as New York State looks at a range of alternatives to meet future power needs. Newsday explores the possibility of new plants as memories of the fight over Long Island's Shoreham plant and the accident at 3 Mile Island fade. And
what did they say? Nuclear options. What was the verb? What were we doing?
New York's nuclear option. Opposition to nuclear power plants is softening. In terms of the people running for governor in New York in November, Kathy Hochul has totally swallowed the nuclear Kool-Aid. She wants 5 major big nuclear plants built in New York State. The Republican Blakeman is as gung-ho as Kathy Hochul is on nuclear. You have here where on Long Island, Brookhaven National Laboratory, which was set up in 1947 to develop civilian uses of nuclear power nationwide. And it was in the lead, a partner with the utility then to create, the plan was 7 to 11 nuclear plants on Long Island.
And how many are there now? None.
Well, because of a huge fight, and we're going to have the energy, and we're going to have the people, and we're going to have the politicians to challenge this.
Well,
Long Island is nuclear free now. In fact, the 2 reactors at Brookhaven Lab have been shut down. Shoreham has been shut. But what this signals to me is in the story, which ran yesterday in Newsday, 2 pages in the major Long Island daily newspaper, they talk about how they quote somebody or other about nuclear being carbon emissions free. And that's the big thing. They tie it into global warming.
But nobody talks about.
And I'm saying the push is on. And just the last thing, the only thing that stopped Shoreham and the other was the end of the private utility, Lilco, essentially through condemnation. Irv Like realized that although so much was preempted in regard to nuclear decades ago, the nuclear juggernaut was not able to get rid of police powers of state, condemnation power. So a Long Island Power Authority was created, and that would have eliminated LILCO as a corporate entity if it continued with its nuclear push. However, like I heard the discussion before, you look at many public utilities around the country that are into nuclear, and some are not. The Long Island Power Authority was fashioned under in California. It's what is it called in Northern
SMUD.
California in Sacramento?
Sacramento
SMUD.
Municipal, but they shut their reactor. We shut the Rancho Seco.
I know. That was the plan on Long Island. It would be like SMUD, elected members of a power authority and so on. But I'm telling you, the fight is on. Trump,
and you know what?
Trump was just here yesterday, pushing for Blakeman, and obviously he, on a national level, pushing for nuclear to a fairly well.
Well, but and these are all Democrats. I mean, Trump is pro-nuclear, obviously, but Hochul and the guy in Pritzker and Shapiro and Newsom. So we got to get to Becerra, and we got to do it now. We got to find the legislators. John Geisman, is there anybody that you can think of in the state legislature now that would carry the water to fight Diablo?
Emphatically no.
Not even one.
These people have been corrupted, Harvey. They are in the beck and call of the utilities and an extraordinarily naive climate slogan that nuclear is somehow essential to that. The technology industry has persuaded them that we need all of the electricity we can get. Nuclear is the only around-the-clock available source of that electricity. They won't directly link it to data centers, but that's what it's all about. This New York thing that Carl mentions is extraordinarily important. There's some pretty informative reports on the New York State government NYSERDA website. California is likely to do a similar study in 2027, but some of the New York preliminary conclusions may be showstoppers. The magnitude of subsidy required to achieve Hochul's 2045 goal is multiple billions of dollars. And the way that the white paper puts it, it's either going to come from taxpayers or ratepayers or some combination of the two. My guess is that's a non-starter in California.
Well, listen, once again, from your lips to God's ears, Steve Caruso, we got 13 more minutes. Mike Hersh, can we do our real estate thing next week? I don't want to drag people past 4:20. Mike Hersh has a great report for us on the housing bill. Mike, maybe you can drag in Susie Shannon, but we'll talk about it, okay? But thank you for being ready to do it. Steve Caruso, real quick, then Lynn.
Yeah. Vina Coley was here. She wanted to
Oh, yeah,
go,
Vina.
Mike, but she's gone now. So I put a link into a PDF into the chat, and they're trying to get all the zip codes in Pike and Scioto County on this bill for RECA so people can be compensated for cancer. And they've done studies. Joe Mangano's been down there. You guys probably know all about this. So I put the PDF. I can put it in the chat, or if you want it, get a hold of me.
Okay, but yes, absolutely. And Kevin Camps, I don't know if you're still with us. Oh, there you are. Kevin, I assume you're in touch with Ray Lutz, because that the steam generator issue is basically what the straw that broke San Onofre's back. And I'm sure you two guys are in touch and are aware of all that's going on with that. But John, we have got to find, we can win this. I mean, this is, if the legislature has to take a vote at some point within the next few months, there's no excuse for us not winning this fight. I mean, it's not like it's a done deal. They have to pass the law. Now, we may have a night of the living dead going on in the legislature, but that has to be overcome. And we have the numbers to do it. I mean, it's such a great luxury in the history of American activism to have the numbers on our side in terms of the money. But we do, by a long shot, for God's sakes, not even close nuclear power. It's a complete economic disaster. And getting more so every day with the breakthroughs in battery and solar. So here we are. LYNN Feinerman, go ahead, then Tonka, and then we're almost out.
Okay, so now that we've heard from John Geisman and he says that the legislature is on whatever, I'm not quite sure why people aren't jumping up and down to do what I suggested, and that is to reintroduce an initiative or proposition to shut Diablo down and structure it this time so that they cannot get around it or override it in any way. And I'll bet you that Dorothy Wright knows somebody who could run that campaign and do it beautifully. So I'm just putting that out there.
2 weeks from now, John, if you'll come back in 2 weeks with Kevin and everybody, we're going to keep on this. Tatanka.
Yeah, I
LYNN.
was gonna bring up the viability of Lynn's option, but we need, and if it's that or something else, there are people, I know, a very well-known Latino woman who is very close to Becerra, and he totally respects her. And it's an ethical issue. This is corporate capture of a public utility. And so we need to offer an alternative, whether it's Lynn's idea or whether it's an idea that it's almost like we need a South African Truth and Reconciliation. We need a way for these people who sold their soul, and many of these legislatures know that, taking the money, a way for them to step away in a way that it's almost like, a confessional or something. I don't know, but a truth and reconciliation where we say, okay, you made a terrible blunder, but thank God the big one hasn't hit. And I don't know how everybody who's been ripped off and it's ruined their lives to have the bills up so high, but this is the change we're going to make. And then you have somebody who has the ear of Becerra, and maybe he takes the lead. Because when they had those 8 Democratic candidates, including Katie Porter and everyone else, no one stood up. No one stood
including
up to
Tom
say they'd
Steyer.
stop. Steyer said, I'd give him longer. He was the worst.
The worst.
But Becerra did say one thing. He said something about, if I'm certain that the safety of the people is taken into account. He left some little thing. Now, whether it means more than money, I don't know, but we move into that little thing. Here's the little thing you said. You can talk about that, and then you get the Latino. We can organize. The people of
let's
the
do it.
state want this. They want what we want, and
Well,
they
we
don't
need
want nuclear.
we need Nelson Mandela to be governor of California, and we need Tom Hayden back in the state Senate. That would be a big, but nonetheless,
they're our
here we.
ancestors, and we'll call on them, and we're all ancestors in waiting. So, let's
All right.
do the right thing for the future
2 weeks from
generations.
today, Mike, again, thank you, Tonka. 2 weeks from today, we're going to reconvene this. We're going to have documents flowing. We're going to have a strategy. We'll have a referendum drafted, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. Kevin Camps, let's hear you, brother.
If you can hear me, I just wanted to
Yeah.
emphasize what John said earlier, that we need to raise holy hell. People have been doing excellent scholarship on this stuff for 50, 75 years. My first day in DC, I was told by the senior US Senator from Nevada on the Yucca issue, Richard Bryan, not Harry Reid, this was 1999, that it's not about the technical merits. It's about raw politics. So it's a battle. It's combat. Yes, we need to have the facts on our side. We have to document those facts. It takes more than that because we are the truth tellers, but we're up against a machine of lies and propaganda. So that's our challenge.
Yes, it is, and we got to remember that PG&E is not all that popular. I mean, they're not exactly having burned down Northern California, having blown up San Bruno, having going out off and on every other day. They're not a beloved player. Am I right, John? I mean,
Yeah, but you can ask yourself, why are we losing to these guys? How could we possibly be losing to a group of thugs and discredited quasi criminals with the level of public support that we think that we have or that we think that we deserve. I'd love to see some public support from anybody that's not eligible for Medi-Cal.
Well, also remember though that in 1970, I always say this, but in 1974, when we first coined no nukes, Richard Nixon got on national television, said there'd be 1,000 atomic reactors in the United States by the year 2000. That would have been 50 in California. And in the year 2000, there were 104. And now they're 94. And San Onofre is shut. Rancho Seco is shut. They didn't build those reactors in Bakersfield, thank God. Humboldt is gone. So, and the biggest
Is
thing
there
is,
anybody under 65 on this call?
you mean in terms of IQ? That's me.
No.
Well, a half a
So-
billion cells in my body just divided, so they're just fresh out of the chute.
Well, so what, John? I mean, when I went to the Monterey Aquarium and I asked for a senior pass, you know what they said? They said, "You mean you're experienced?" Which I guess referred to the fact that I had, in fact, seen Jimi Hendrix in concert.
Right,
So,
indeed.
we still got enough juice in us to shut this down.
T
And,
has raised her hand.
Oh, go ahead, T.
And Kevin is 57.
She just raised her hand to say that she's not on Medicare yet. But
Oh,
T,
okay.
I'm under the threshold, but I raised my hand to the Jimi Hendrix comment. So I was like, yeah.
Chris Alexander is a young 60.
Yes.
So we've got some young folks.
So we
Well,
got more
listen-
support than I thought.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I mean, John, look, we got we got what we got. And
Well, it's combined wisdom is what it is. Forget everything else. This is the elder council. Be proud.
Yeah, I'm looking for something that's going to stampede the legislature.
Well, let's find it. Let's do it. I mean, the fact that what's his name from San Luis Obispo is angry about the mere $300 million. Look, Patty Poppy gets $17 million a year, right? Isn't that what they
Closer
pay
to
her?
20.
Huh?
Closer to 20.
Come on. We can beat these guys. We beat them we beat 1 for 2 at Seabrook. We stopped Montague. We can shut Diablo Canyon.
Where's
And,
the
uh,
critical? The big
Get a-
question is, where's the critical mass?
Get a
And that's
concert
what you're looking.
going.
What's
Get a
that,
concert
Mike?
going. Get a concert going.
Well, we can do that. We
With
gotta
the
get
younger crowd.
That's right. Get some hip hop artists there.
Yeah, but look, we don't need. I mean, this is a generational technology. Nuclear power, comes out of the 1950s, and so do we. So it's
The problem is that you were exposed to nuclear radiation when you were young, when they were testing out in Nevada. So we're all
Mhm.
victims of that. But the younger
Here we
folks
are.
don't realize that, and they don't have that in their memory. So
John, I think we can win this with old people. I'm sorry. This is our legacy, and the legislators aren't that young either. So
The younger people think we're standing in the way of their climate solution.
well, not for
Oh,
long, because
no, there's
but
nothing.
look, battery. The what we really have going for us is the greatest technological transition in history, which is wind, solar, geothermal, batteries, and electric cars. I mean, the car company BYD in China just announced that they can charge their car for less than 20 minutes and get 900 miles. I mean, if that's not a miracle, what is? So let's make this happen. We can do it. Well, this will be the AARP revolution here, but we got to win this one, and I think we can. So let's meet again in 2 weeks. This is a great session, Mike. Next week, please we can do your real estate thing, and next week we're going to speak on election protection. All right, Tonka, you want a final word here?
Well, I just want to say what John's saying. We need a kick-ass campaign like Kevin talked about, but there is going to be re-education. the level of ignorance of many of the young people, they just don't know better. So, but we can do that. We're masters at that. Okay. So let's get it going. And geese, man, I mean, the geese, that's the leadership model, man. I mean, shared leadership, the V, any goose goes down, he's always another goose goes down with her or him. So we've got the leadership model.
All right, that's the V.
V, si
And-
se puede,
See you in 2
Solartopia.
weeks, and we will be way advanced in 2 weeks now.
And
Thank you, everybody.
Sonny, I have a quick question. If it's nuclear power, how come it's mainly gaslighting?
Because it's also Trump power. And
There
the
you go.
equation of Donald Trump being now in charge of nuclear safety and regulation, if that doesn't scare the hell out of everybody of any age, I don't know what will.
Well, if you
All
vote
right,
for
you guys.
nuclear, you're voting for Trump. Trump
There
getting
you
money.
go.
There you go.
See you in 2 weeks. See you in a week. See you next week on election protection, and we'll revisit Diablo in 2 weeks. No nukes, everybody.
No nukes. Thanks, T.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you
Thank you,
all.
Myla. Thank you, Dorothy. Everybody. Don, Lynn. No nukes.
Allison, T.
Oh yeah, T. Yes, please. Ray Lutz.
Okay, everybody.